as they say in bad movies, let's do this.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is David Francis. I'm curatorial director here at CoCA, getting ready to step away, but happy to welcome you here tonight for Joseph DeLappe's talk. Joseph is joining us from Dundee, Scotland, and will be introduced in a few minutes by my colleague, Xavier Lopez. I'm going to say a few words about the program and then introduce Xavier. So we're delighted for the last 6 months to have worked together on this exhibition that is surrounding you in the gallery. Joseph kindly agreed to be our juror for the exhibition, and Xavier will talk a little bit more about that. Maybe Joseph will too. But we have 32 artists in this show. We received quite a bit of interest. We had over 60 entries from around the Northwest, as well as far away as Nevada and London. So we had, it's a national show, it's an international show. As you know well, it is connected to what's going on politically. We'll be talking a little bit more about that tonight, the politics of resistance. I want to talk about my colleague Xavier. I've been on the board with Xavier the past 3 years. Xavier Lopez is a performance artist, is a visual artist, is a student of many, that wears many hats, and worked with Joseph DeLappe at the University of Nevada in Reno over 25 years ago, and remembered so well taking classes from Joseph that when it came time to pick a juror for our annual exhibition at CoCA this year, Xavier offered to contact his favorite art professor from 25 years plus before. So we're so delighted that Joseph agreed to do that. But I want to let Xavier tell you a little bit more about it. Xavier, again, is on our board here. He's on the curatorial committee. He is the director of the Latinx Performance Art Festival. He had a solo show at Seattle year 2023. And let me turn it over to Xavier.
Let me see if
Thank
I
you.
can move.
Thanks for everyone for coming. We have about 15, 20 people in the house just for Joseph. I don't know if Joseph can see that or not, but
We might be able to swing around in a minute. So I first met, it's ironic that you should say, let's say, what did I find? Anyway, it was about what, late 90s when Joe first started teaching at University of Nevada, Reno. Right. That's right. Because it's good that we have some artists who are from Nevada, because that's where I first met Joe. And absolutely, it completely failed all of his classes, or at least I think I ended up getting C's or D's, something in that regard. I was not. It took me a long time to figure out how to work with computers. I was in that generation that sort of fell through. But I was intrigued and really enjoyed his classes. And yes, as you were right, that when it came to picking my first artist for doing a group show, for jurying a group show, it was Joe that definitely came to mind. Let's see, what would I don't know, Joe, do you want to say anything about those early years at Nevada and anything that you remember about working with us students and being I think at University of Nevada, Reno, our first computer specific or new media specific professor, and we were super excited to have you. I remember that.
Yeah, it was so I'm just checking. I don't know if the live stream is working on Facebook. My wife's out of town. She's actually watching. She's saying it's not working.
Okay.
So, but I'll answer your question. Well, maybe you guys check out some.
We're recording it, so after this, we'll post it.
Okay. Yeah, she's getting a loop of. Okay, Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to share it.
I mean, if you can figure out a way to send it to your page, Joe, I don't know.
We'll get started here. I think
Okay, sounds good.
Recordings are always good. Yeah, so gosh, well, yeah, coming to Reno, Nevada was a quite interesting experience. yeah, it was. Well, I could talk for hours about that, but I will say, this: I don't know, there was something in the water or something in sort of the mid '90s, late '90s, early 2000s. We actually started a new program there, the BFA interdisciplinary. I don't think you were in that, were you? You were just before that, as I
I
recall.
was, yeah, I think I was closing up like my last 2 years when I think you started, and I
Yeah,
was
that was
getting ready to go to
yeah.
UC Davis.
Okay, okay. That makes sense because I came in about 93, I think, and actually I created this program, the BFA interdisciplinary, and it took students like yourself who were kind of really sort of that we saw who were going to be artists, those were really serious, and it was how people applied to it, came into it, but it was an extraordinary program and still is, just in terms of giving these students access to what the department has to offer rather than being in just one disciplinary and that kind of thing.
I do
But
know.
yeah, there were some amazing students there who have gone on to incredible things, including yourself. So it was
Yeah,
quite an interesting time.
not to interrupt you, but the folks at UC Davis, is where I went and did my grad work, said that they really respected the professors and students of UNR back when we were
Yeah,
there. They were,
yeah, I think from your there were some, and it might have been you, might have been others, but I can still remember sending some students to some MFA programs, and then the people contacting us, and they're like, "Hey, send us more." It was like there were some really kick-ass students came out of our program. So yeah, quite an interesting environment. I would say they weren't particularly interested in digital media in the 90s. Actually, there was quite a bit of opposition to it. It was a really fraught political environment for a number of reasons, but persevered. And, a lot of the work some of the work I'm going to show you tonight kind of came out during that period. But I can make some connections as we go along. But and also should apologize. It's 11 p.m. for me, so I'm a bit incoherent. So if I ramble a little bit, just go ahead and cut me off. But you do the best I can.
Let me tell our audience a little bit more about you, Joe.
Sure.
Joseph DeLappe is an artist, activist, and educator currently working in Scotland, where he's professor of games and tactile media at Abertay University, Dundee. Working with electronic and digital media since 1983, his projects in online gaming performance, sculpture, and electromechanical installation have been shown throughout the world. Considered a pioneer in the critical and creative engagement of video games, performance activism, and community-based practices, DeLappe co-edited the book Insight, Digital Art and Activism, with art historian and curator Dr. Laura Luzzi in 2023. And in 2027, he was awarded a Guggenheim in the Fine Arts. And again, we're grateful for him during the exhibition that he ended up titling
we don't need no fascist group thing.
We don't need no fascist group thing. And he's going to talk a little bit more about that. I wanted to say a little bit more about thanking the audience. How many people tonight are in the show, artists in the show? So
Nice.
we probably have 9 or 10 artists that are here also simultaneously to pick up and come out and listen to your remarks, Joseph. So I want to thank artists for sort of doing that, picking up, and at the same time engaging Joseph, who picked your works, right? A lot of the artists are here in the show tonight. And you're listening to the juror talk a little bit more about what went into his decisions about curating the show and picking your work for the show. So also a thank you. Is anyone here on the winter scavenger hunt that we have down in Pioneer Square here, connecting galleries? So thank you for coming out, Rebecca. You're also in the show. But we had a winter scavenger hunt. Thank you for Val for coordinating that with the other galleries here. So I just wanted to shout out for that. Thank you. We're trying to get more people down here on Saturday. It's a rainy Saturday. It's 11 o'clock there. What is it, like 3:30 here, 3:15 here? It's cold. It's almost snowing outside. It's snowing up the pass, but we're all warm and cozy in here with our program tonight. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joseph. I'm going to turn it back to Xavier.
Yes, I think that so one of the things we have on the itinerary is for Joe to maybe talk a little bit about his work, his history, and perhaps some, some of the thought that went into picking the work for the show. So without any further ado, Joe, if you are ready to go ahead and talk to us about your work.
Yeah, hang on. Let me get my screen shared here. Second. we go. All right, can you see that?
You sure can. Yep.
Cool. Okay, so a few things just to clarify. Uh, I actually live in Edinburgh, um, or Edinburgh, as a lot of Americans would say. But my job is at Abertay University in Dundee, indeed. And just to correct I got a Guggenheim in 2017, not in the future in 2027. Be great to get another one, but I think that's a once in a lifetime thing. But yeah, so I'm actually just a bit of background. I'm from San Francisco, California. I went to San Jose State University in the early 1980s to get a degree in graphic design and illustration, and just so happened to kind of fall into one of the first ever kind of computer art programs on the West Coast at San Jose State through the Cadre Institute, and got a landed up getting the first MFA out of that program in 1990. And my then my ex-wife and I had twin daughters in 1990, just my last year of grad school, and landed up being very fortunate to get a research teaching position at University of South Florida straight out of grad school. Was there for 2 years and then couldn't stand Florida. I wanted to get back out west, and Reno was as close as we could get to California, to be honest. And took a position at University of Nevada, Reno, and started a digital media program there. That was quite successful. Was there until 2016, I guess, is when I got recruited for a professor position over here in Scotland. And that's a whole nother story, but really happy to be here. And I basically was hired to be a full-time research professor. So pretty much they pay me to do my work, which is amazing, and feel very fortunate. But yeah, so making politics, commemoration, resistance, and play. This is a new lecture. Actually, I did at Stanford University, was there last October for some talks and a show at the Silicon Valley Archives. But this focuses on a particular strain of my work dealing with these kind of issues. I'm going to dive right in. I got like 45 minutes, right, to sort of barrel through some work, and then we're going to have some questions, as I recall. Yeah? Okay. Um, just some of my first ever work when I was in art school. Um, Sadly, I think rather prescient. So I was studying graphic design at San Jose State, but you were required to take all of these elective courses, and I really love photography. This was before the computer lab existed. And I started doing these. This was, 1983. I was very immersed in the hardcore punk scene in San Francisco, Dead Kennedys, all that kind of stuff, and really being politicized. And this was the Reagan era, and I really then sort of saw this kind of America First, American exceptionalism, kind of this sort of. It just felt kind of scary to me, and I did this whole series where I photographed on black and white film through a camera out of contemporary magazines and things with, America's back and all this kind of stuff, and then double expose those same rolls of film, wind them back, and double expose them in images from Nazi Germany. And these were the results. And went in the darkroom and printed these. And it was my first ever exhibition, actually. It was called Gott mit uns, which is German for God with us. And, I don't know, scary to see this work being so relevant where things are today. But those seeds of fascism, I think, were planted, during this period, even before in many ways. So anyway, that's a larger discussion, I'm sure. But moving forward into the early 90s, like I said, I moved to Tampa, Florida, University of South Florida for 2 years. This was the first artwork I did out of grad school. This is called Gulf War Memories. And Tampa, Florida was where Norman Schwarzkopf retired and where he lived. And he was the general who led the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein. And I remember when that war launched, it was in a Home Depot in San Jose, actually, and it came over the radio that they were bombing Baghdad. Um, and moving to Florida and experiencing being there, and then reading something that said that this really was kind of like the first televised war, like everything was being shown in real time and smart bombs and all this kind of stuff. And one of the things I read was that fast food sales skyrocketed during the war because people were rushing home from work to watch it on television. And it kind of sickened me a bit. So I made this piece where you stand looking at these images, sort of collaged montage, digital montage done in Photoshop, backlit with fluorescent lights. And then these box fans that would be on the back of a computer. And I bought a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken and ate the whole thing, and then hung the chicken bones on these fans. So when you stood in front of it, looking at these images of the Gulf War, you basically were bombarded with this horrible smell of Kentucky Fried Chicken bones rotting. Um, Kind of speaks for itself. Um, Jumping forward, this is definitely not political work, but it led to certain things. I was doing a lot of work in the early in the 90s with desktop computer mice as sculptural objects. Um, this was one that was a functional device. This was my artist mouse. And it basically is a appendage that allows me to connect pencils, paintbrushes, and I would just record my computer time, like is mapping everything I did on the computer. At the time, I had started playing video games because my students were doing them, and you got these free games with the kind of equipment and software you ordered from these, Mac Mall and things. That was before. This is before the Apple Store and all that. You used to have to order stuff through these mail order catalogs. So yeah, I did this inspired by a number of things, like Marcel Duchamp's New Descending a Staircase, and this couple, Frank and Lillian Gilbreth, who invented the system for um, kind of tracking and recording industrial factory workers with these light systems as a way of improving the flow of work. And really, there's some inspiration from this and the Murray brothers, other things as well. Um, but when I made this, I was like, okay, what's going to make the best marks? And I was playing this game at the time, Unreal, which was the original, just on your desktop version of this very famous game. Um, so I started replacing my mouse pad with pieces of drawing paper and recording each of these drawings is a level of the game. So I'd play the game and just it would record and make these crazy marks, these abstract drawings from play. And I just like the combination of the digital analog. You'll see that a lot in my work going forward. Um, Few years into doing this kind of work with games and drawing, the game started merging onto the internet where you could actually play online against other players. And so I was playing Quake and other games like that. And it was just kind of this weird revelation, these spaces, these maps that you would play, and you would play against players on the internet who were, in Japan, Germany, across the United States. And I started thinking, wow, this is really weird. It's like this sort of online theater space, or kind of thinking of it as a new kind of public space, right? So I thought, why do I need to shoot? Why do I need to kill people? Why can't I do other things? So I had this idea to start performing in these spaces as a kind of passive kind of intervention. So this is the first experiment of this type that I did, which was called Howl Elite Force Voyager. And I went into a Star Trek shooter game, and instead of playing the game, my character was called Allen Ginsberg, and I performed via the keyboard Howl word for word without shooting. I would stand still and type and be killed, etc. And it was really crazy. It was like this experimental gesture, like what would this be like? And I thought it was actually kind of silly and kind of stupid, but it led to loads of things. And turns out it was actually one of the first instances of a artist kind of doing this kind of experimental kind of poetry performance work in a video game. Um, I went on from there to do various things. This is, during uh, the second invasion attack on Iraq in the early 2000s after 9/11. Um, I did this piece in 2003, and this was a reading of World War I poet Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen, their poetry into a World War II shooter game. And this was a precursor to a work called Dead in Iraq that I'll talk about in a few minutes here. Um, but this this was key to sort of politicizing me as an artist. You know, the 9/11 attacks, you know, awful. But most people probably don't remember that the entire world was kind of with us after that attack, and then of course the Bush administration created lies around Iraq, etc. But there was this memorial call, this open call, and this website that was created where they shared over 5,000 proposals from around the world, and you can still access this and see these proposals. And this was about a year and a half or so into the invasion of Iraq, and I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, okay, you know, there were several thousand people killed during this attack, but by this time, when this memorial competition went on, there had been many more thousands of people killed in Iraq as a result of this, and they had nothing to do with this terrorist attack on our country." And I thought to myself, boy, they'll never do this kind of memorial process to the civilians in Iraq. And that sparked several ideas. One was this. Around this time, this video game was launched, America's Army. It's a recruiting platform developed by the Defense Department to, recruit young people into the military via video game. Um, and I thought to myself, boy, this is a serious game. There's something that needs to be done in this. And it took a couple of years to sort of formulate a response, but it was partly in reaction to that 9/11 memorial process that this came about, because I started thinking about, God, what's going to be the memorial to the thousands of US soldiers who are dying in Iraq. And I had come of age, in the early 80s was the time of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Violin, and all, it was very controversial. I grew up, during the Vietnam War, et cetera. So this, I had this idea, and in 2006, I went into the America's Army game, and rather than play the game, I would go in as a kind of neutral interloper, same strategy I was using when I was reciting poetry. But in this instance, my avatar's name was Dead in Iraq. I would stand in position and I would start typing the name, age, service branch, and date of death of every American casualty from the war. Um, this was not a popular thing to do. Uh, it was, yeah, it was a bit crazy, but this was this was the work that really kind of, it was fascinating because there were some news stories about this. It got into like Slate and Wired magazine, and all over the place. I got interviewed on CNN. I was getting death threats, and it was really something to be actually making a work that was at once a kind of protest, but also a memorial, but also an artwork and also activism. Um, and it just really, I had to really solidify why I was doing this and defend myself constantly. And so it really sort of steeled me, kind of, I don't know, it built me up in a way where I was like, wait a minute, I'm a citizen, I'm paying for this war. Of course I have something to say about it. And it's, breaking my heart. These soldiers are over there dying for a lie. Um, anyway, but the reactions of the other players are typical, like on this screen, dead, please, this is not the forum to do this. I don't give a fuck, man. Will all the hackers go play ping pong or something? Loads of people saying, this is a game, this is a game. Like we come here to escape from this. And my point was, in part, as this kind of fleeting digital memorial, you'll see in the video in a moment that the text goes in and then it disappears, but also as a kind of cautionary gesture to what is essentially, this is like virtual military territory that is directly connected to the conflict in Iraq. Like this was not some neutral play space where people could come escape. This was part of, the same money paid for this was paying for, the bullets being and bombs being dropped. That's me performing live. So I did this live sometimes, but mostly privately on my computer. But here's a little video that of what it was like. Just show a moment of what. this does give a good idea of what the actual performance. This is directly recorded from the intervention. You join the game, you're put into a platoon. You'll see I'll turn and you can see the other soldiers. But I would generally drop my weapon and I'd find a kind of a vantage point. And if you look up on the top left, you'll see I'll start typing there. And I went through the names chronologically as they were released by the Defense Department.
Ricardo X. Rodriguez, 23 Army, October 4th, 2007.
Yeah, we usually get killed very quickly. This is a game where you die once, and you can kind of hover and wait until the next match, almost like a spirit over your fallen avatar. And I would keep, and so on.
Listener to ARCHA and the 26 Army, October 5th, 2007.
Like I said, that was a very controversial thing to do. I could talk about that piece for ages, but if you have questions about it when we get to the discussion part, glad to entertain those. So the America's Army thing was like a whole system. They had comic books, graphic novels, a website with a kind of gamers forum, and they had action figures. And remember buying, I bought the set of action figures, and these, of course, were real heroes. These were people who came home from Afghanistan or Iraq in one piece. And I was this nerdy model builder when I was a teenager. And so I actually kit bashed a couple of these figures to recreate. I don't know if you can see that up on the top right. That's that avatar. That's my dead avatar that was in the previous photo screenshot. I recreated that as a new kind of action figure and showed it, in exhibitions along with the video. Intriguing thing about this, I was doing a search for this image on the left some time ago. And on Google put in America's Army action figure. And this is a screenshot of the image results. And what blew me away was, like, you can see about 5 representations of my work show up in this search. And I was kind of like, wow, that's like this accidental intervention, so that anyone who was searching for America's Army action figure would see my work in the mix of these, valorized kind of soldiers, which I thought was curious thing, fed into some future ideas as well. As a larger kind of iteration of this is a cardboard sculpture in low polygon created directly from the kind of downloaded, extracted 3D data from my fallen avatar in the game. And some other, I mentioned the civilian casualties in Iraq. That was a big focus of my work for several years. And this is just some statistics. We don't really know how many people died in Iraq, but these are just some estimates along the way. And the bottom one, that's the most recent. That was a very well researched, the costs of the war on terror. 4.5 million people, right? That's like seriously fucked up. And you wonder why things are the way they are. Anyway, sorry, digressing a little bit, but that just what was happening in terms of that Iraq body count. That's a figure they would update as things were happening and the carnage that was happening in Iraq. Again, a country that was not involved in the attacks of 9/11, but suffered for it nonetheless. So yeah, I had this idea and I created this project, launched in 2007, called IraqiMemorial.org. And this was kind of a takeoff on that 9/11 call for proposals, but this was a call for imagined proposals, memorial proposals to the civilian casualties in Iraq, and happening while the war was still happening. I ended up getting about 250 entries to this and did it's no longer online, but extraordinary stuff came in. I won't go into detail on these things, but landed up having 3 exhibitions. One was at the Shepherd Fine Arts Gallery at University of Nevada, Reno. And what we showed was actually the top 10 works selected by about a dozen curators, volunteer curators who went through every entry and picked out their favorites. And we then invited the artists to reimagine their proposals as these poster boards, which were the same size as the poster boards submitted for the 9/11 Memorial competition. And we showed these along with interactive elements on the website. The most resonant of these three exhibitions, this was in New York City at the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts. And Iraqi Memorial exhibition opened 3 days before the dedication of the 9/11 Memorial in 2011. So it was literally in the same city where that was happening. And I'm really interested in the notion of counter monuments, works that kind of question memorials and the kind of valorization of warfare through them, that there sometimes these devices, memorials can be as much about forgetting as remembering. So this is just kind of a way to sort of forefront a lot of these ideas and themes and dedicated to these, the memory of these people who were dying supposedly for our safety. Anyway, bit of a shift here, but still focused on kind of militarism and that. Yeah, I was living in, Nevada for 20 something years, and I read this quote. Uh, if a concentrated solar power system was built that was 100 mile by 100 mile square in size in the American Southwest, this would be more than enough to meet the country's entire energy demand from the Union of Concerned Scientists. And I remember reading this and I was like, man, that sounds reasonable. And I looked at the map of Nevada, thinking, it is the Southwest, and that area, that strange area above Las Vegas, I was like, what is that? And that's the Nevada Test and Training Range, where used to be called the Nellis Air Force Range. This is where the Nevada test site is, Area 51, all that stuff. But it just so happens to be like precisely about 200 square miles in size. And so I thought, well, what if we reimagine this, which is the largest peacetime military base in the world, as a gigantic solar farm? And how would one identify that creatively? So what I did, that's basically the red line there is mapping the roads closest to the base to see how you would encircle this territory, right? So I did this project where I rode a bicycle and dragging these enormous pieces of chalk, plaster, gypsum. Nevada's made up of loads of gypsum. And I rode around the base. Took about 10 days, and I drew a line. I literally encircled the base by drawing a line around the base, as a symbolic gesture, as this way of saying. And it was called Project 929. That's because there were 928 atomic tests on the Nevada test site. So it was a way of saying this is the next test. Like, can we do something that is for peaceful purposes rather than kind of this military stuff that we seem to be so hardcore addicted to in the United States? Yeah, so that was quite a durational physical project. I've done several of these things. This is the only one I'm talking about here. But that's a way of sort of putting your body into the service of art and performance and, physical exertion. It was a really interesting, very strange project. But one of the things that in researching the Nellis Test and Training Range was the Creech Air Force Base was there. And this was around the time when, just a few years after Obama started ramping up drone wars overseas, right? In my view, another step towards where we are today, doing anything we want in the world. And I just, it was extraordinary. You're living here in Nevada, and here there's these pilots living in Las Vegas, and they're driving into the base, and they're bombing people in Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, etc. Something really twisted about that, and connected also to video games in my mind. But I became obsessed in a way with drones, and in some ways because it was a Democrat, Obama, who was embracing these so wholeheartedly. And they were doing exactly the same thing that the Bush administration was doing in terms of trying to hide the civilian casualties. So I started doing some projects around it. One of them was the first one was this cowardly drone project, and I downloaded the largest images, the most popular images of Predator and Reaper drones on Google, and I started replacing, on the fuselage, putting the word cowardly in Photoshop, and then I reshared these online with the intent of trying to accomplish what the America's Army action figure did that I showed you before. Like, could I purposefully intervene in that Google kind of algorithm and have these appear in image searches for Predator or Reaper drones? And lo and behold, at the time, about a month or so after putting these on Facebook, on a Tumblr page, on my website, if you did a search for Predator drone, you got this. And there's two, I don't know why these are the ones that showed up in the top like 20 images, but it was a kind of minor victory of sorts. It was like, yeah, okay. So somebody looking for an image of a Predator drone, I guess, going to come across this and it will, sort of explode in their brain a little bit, which that was the intention. Some other drone projects. I did a lot of work around drones. This was actually just a video still from a video of Afghani villagers stoning a fallen American drone. Little known fact that a lot of these drones crash. But I developed this idea for a project that I did in at CSU Fresno in 2014. I was invited, commissioned to do a work there, working with students and local volunteers, where we built in low polygon, bright yellow plastic, corrugated plastic, a full size, 100% to scale reproduction of a Predator drone, which was a very physical experience and very, really sort of pushed my skills and the students and volunteers to make something that big. We installed it on the campus quad lawn as if it had fallen from the sky. And then we had a memorial kind of performance process where we had Pakistani immigrants to the US reading these cards with the names of people who had been killed, civilians who had been killed by American drones, their date of death and their age. And we handed each one of these to a volunteer who would then go and write that information on the surface of the drone as kind of a, community-based memorial. American citizens memorializing the victims of our military-industrial complex. The names were translated into Urdu as well. This was a really intense project, and yeah, it was something else. And it was amazing working with all of these people. The work became theirs. It was this really interesting, wonderful collaborative experience.
Which campus was that?
This was CSU Fresno, now called Fresno State, I think. Or they changed their name.
So this was after
Fresno.
University of Nevada, Reno? This was after you were at
No,
UNR?
this was at Fresno State, yeah,
So
in
this was
California.
okay.
And it was actually curiously in the path of a nearby Air Force base. So the jets would fly over and they would see this. It actually appeared in Google Image or Google Earth after a few months of display, which was quite cool. Yeah, so video games, and there's a lot of work I'm not showing you here. I'm just kind of jumping into some of the key works here, but this is just a kind of this is what shooter games are like. Basically, this is a Medal of Honor title that dealt with you could either be an American soldier in Afghanistan or a Taliban fighter. This is the only video game that was ever banned from U.S. military bases because it represented the Taliban. It was quite controversial, but I show it here because it's basically like this is what most shooter games are like. You have equal sides, they have similar weapons, different uniforms, and it's about skill and fighting each other. I got approached by an organization in New York City, turbulence.org, who wanted to give me a commission. I needed to propose something for it, about 10 grand. And so I decided, well, I've been doing all this stuff in video games and such for a number of years. Maybe it's time to make a game. And I wanted to make a game out of drone warfare. Like what would you do? And the challenge there is like, at the top, if you're a drone pilot, you have all the agency, right? If you're on the ground, zero agency. How do you turn that into a meaningful, playable experience? Um, so that's what actually first brought me to Scotland. Came over to Dundee to work with some game designers, and we came up with this game called Killbox. That 10 grand was used for a month long, kind of working with these game designers to come up with a prototype, and then we applied for another about 35,000 US from Creative Scotland, which is kind of like their NEA, and finished this game. And it was nominated for a Scottish BAFTA, which is like an Oscar over here, and it's freely downloadable and playable. You can find it on Steam and other places. But it basically, what we came up with was like a two-person player. You're either a drone pilot, as the screen above on the top there shows, or you're this kind of abstracted child, kind of wandering around this Afghani farm village, and you go through this experience. Generally, we like to have it in an installation environment where the two computers are networked to each other, and you're playing as either the pilot or the civilian on the ground. And eventually, there's a drone strike, and if you're the child, you're killed. And you kind of look up and see this other person across the way who just killed you, and it's a very emotional experience. It's quite intense. We designed it purposefully to be visually seductive but not fun. Um, and it's been shown all over the place. This is kind of the most formal installation we had in Dundee, but it really succeeded in kind of simulating what this might be like, but also not to make something that was like, oh, it's a video game. It is a serious game and an engaging experience. Led to a number of other things, with other projects. This is work I did in 2015 for a big exhibition in Los Angeles. And it sort of speaks for itself. Liberty weeps. I've done this piece 3 or 4 times. There is a version of this on the campus at De Anza College in California. Um, this is that one that they moved to one of their admin buildings. It's still there. Um, And I've recently done a 3D print of this work and thinking of doing an edition of these as things go. Um, some other projects. This was a concept for a drone strike victims memorial. And the idea was making a flower bed in the shape of a drone shadow. But imagine them in, like, this was one that was designed specifically for Pakistan, and it would feature the national flower of the particular country. And because we were bombing so many countries, the idea was like Iraq, I think, was roses, Afghanistan was tulips, Yemen was particular Arabica coffee, and in Pakistan, it was jasmine. So I did have an opportunity to just sort of realize this, but it was not a flower bed. This was the rooftop of a gallery, Plan 9 in Karachi, Pakistan. And what I did, actually, I used some of the money from the Guggenheim grant to buy, God, I think it was about 300 potted jasmine plants that were put on the rooftop into the shape of a drone shadow. And at the end of the show, these were gifted to people from the neighborhood. So it was kind of this gesture of, imagine these plants, some of them are probably still growing, and that's a sort of peaceful gesture from an artist. I wasn't able to go to this, right? But so it was kind of mimicking in a way the process of the drone strike, but in a very different, with a very different intent and result. Um,
So
this
you
is
sort of became the drone pilot in that instance.
Yeah, I was like the artist from a distance in a way, but it was
Yeah.
this collaborative thing with the curator, and it was really cool. Um, this is the first piece I did after moving to Scotland, and like I said, I got recruited for this professor position. I just got a Guggenheim, so I actually had some money to work on some projects, and I had this idea, and this was bit of a story here, but I'll try to be quick. So February 2000. 2018 was the horrible shooting in Parkland, Florida at the high school. And Donald Trump came out and said something basically blaming video games. And local news in Scotland reached out to Abertay University because Abertay University, where I'm at, it has the first ever video game design program in the world and the top one in Europe. And so when there's questions about video games, they'll oftentimes contact the university and they said, oh, what do you all, they basically asked, can someone, talk to us about what Donald Trump said about video games? And they said, oh, we have this new Yank on staff. Go talk to him. And so they reached out to me and I did a little bit of research and, it was kind of shocking to see the comparison, like the Iraq conflict, something like 5,000 American soldiers died over, 11 years of that conflict. Um, Triple that die every year, at least in the United States, from homicide, gun violence. So I had this idea, and Grand Theft Auto, very famous video game, most people don't know this, was invented in Dundee, Scotland. It was Scottish game designers who made the first version of this game. And Rockstar Games comes out of Dundee, etc. So it has this lineage to where I was then living. But I had this notion, like, could you take a video game and turn it into a self-playing automated device for kind of memorializing and reenacting American gun violence. So what I did, you see the little number down there, 3586. There's a video of this that will hopefully play. But I basically worked with the programmer who worked on Killbox, and we hacked Grand Theft Auto to essentially started July 4th, 2018, and basically up to that point, the Gun Violence Archive online tracks gun violence, homicides, American homicides daily. They update as people are killed by guns in the United States. So we set this game up where it scraped the data from that website and then it would play for 24 hours through the number of people that had been killed by guns since January 1st up to that date. So this was like June 27th, 2018. And by then, probably about 7,000 people have been killed by guns. So over 24 hours, it would play through those 7,000 killings, and the avatars would be killing each other to add that up. This is a little video that gives you an idea. And the soundtrack to this, I was a looping version of God Bless America. So used a backtracking camera shot that just kind of automatically wandered through the game space. You see as people die, the number will go up. And so on. So yeah, and I should say, it's a very complicated project. This ran for a year, 24/7, and was on live streamed on Twitch TV. So you could watch this, and it was on the GTA channel. So people would come to it or looking for people playing GTA, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" And the comments and all that. But it really, I show this I have about 5 segments of the entire playthrough of the song in different locations. I do it as a projected work, and it's really quite. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty scary when you see that quantified, right? And you imagine that is representing an actual death. Anyway, yeah. So, couple more pieces here, and I'll be done.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
This was done in 2021, coming back to the United States, first time after the pandemic. I was in Scotland for the time frame, and my grown children were living in New York and New Haven and hadn't seen them. Flew in September 2021 and totally forgot. I mean, literally landed and was like, oh shit, it's the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And we had just withdrawn from Afghanistan. And if you remember, there was that horrible drone strike where a family was killed in Afghanistan, and in Kabul. So I just had this idea to go to the 9/11 memorial, and the family that was blown up, 10 individuals, was the Ahmadis, and it was a father bringing supplies back to his family, and our drone people tracked them and blew them up and blew up this father with his kids. So I went to the site, and if you have family members who were killed in 9/11, you can be given these pieces of paper and a piece of black crayon, and you can go trace their names. So I went and instead traced the first names of all of these family members, creating them from finding letters from random names on the memorial itself. So these are the family that was blown up. And it's a way of, again, like questioning who is remembered, who is mourned. This was really difficult work to do and very scary, um, but very meaningful, right? These are people we just forget about. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'll go through these so we can get on here. I think I've got two more pieces, but I show them like that. Um, the most recent works I've done here in Scotland, I started this project this last summer on the 4th of July, and it's called Sorry, USAD, the United States Apologies Desk. And I've sewn Scottish wool letters onto an American flag that says sorry. And it's just me as an American citizen living abroad and feeling completely helpless and embarrassed and so angry what's going on back home. Like, what can I do from a distance? And so I was like, this country let me in as an immigrant. I just became a citizen a month ago. I thought, I'm just going to go apologize. Americans don't apologize, right? We're a fucking arrogant country. We don't, we never do anything wrong. And I just thought this is a way of kind of trying to, just on an individual level, go to a public space. This is the center of Edinburgh. And I just sat on the 4th of July and I talked with people. And it was extremely emotional experience. Very powerful, really intense. My wife Ellie was there photographing the entire experience. And yeah, it was incredible. And a few weeks later, Trump came to Aberdeen to see his golf courses. I went and did that. And I got interviewed. There's a segment on Reuters. If you look up "Sorry, DeLappe Reuters," you'll find this video, and it played all over the world. Like it was insane, and that I love that that it was picked up and this kind of sentiment was taken abroad. My most recent work. This is not my work, but if you've not heard of this, this is Janie Godley, Scottish comedian. 10 years ago, she protested at Trump's Burberry golf course just south of Glasgow the day Brexit passed. And she went, and Trump was just happened to be visiting. And she went and stood on his golf course with this sign, Trump is a cunt. And legendary. She's died since then, but she's my hero. I recently made what I'm proposing as a monument to Janie Godley, and I'm actually going to. This is created from an action figure that's been reconfigured with polymer clay and things and painted. But I'm going to put this together as a formal public art proposal and send it to the golf course. It's Trump's golf course, and say, "Hey, why don't you do this?" So anyway, that's me. I hope I didn't go too long, but happy to answer questions. And I think I'm going to end the slideshow there. And feel free to go to my website. There's loads of other work on there too.
Can we get the lights, Dave? One of the things that really okay, we'll open this up to group questions, but I was like, I'm just gonna take advantage now. It seems to me that your work tends to want to affect the narrative, affect the general, like, get bigger and speak to as many people as possible. Does that seem to be one of the things that you do with your work? It seems like it.
Yeah, I think
That's not even a good question. I apologize, guys.
no, that's a very good question because I'll be honest, the thing is like functioning as an artist, I mean that you mentioned the 90s in Reno. And I had, my first 10 years out of grad school and going for a tenure track position at a university and all that. And being in Reno, Nevada, it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. Like, and getting your work out is just like so difficult. Like, I mean, you used to send out slide packets and all that. And when I started doing work in video games, and thinking of the internet as this kind of venue, and really kind of shifted from saying, gosh, why isn't this gallery or this museum showing my work, to just being like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to look at the internet and think, there's an audience there. Like, let's see what this is like. So doing that performance, the Howl thing, like there were, six other players there. Nobody was there. But there was a piece I did after that that I didn't show called Quake Friends, where I got six of my students together from the digital media program at UNR, and we reenacted as a performance troupe an entire episode of the TV show Friends in the game Quake. And this got featured in the New York Times. Like, it got written up. This writer heard about it happening and put it out in the New York Times. And it was like, holy crap, that's like an amount of publicity you can't imagine. But of course, I got threatened with a lawsuit from Warner Brothers Television almost immediately. And but that was like, it's really pleasing and kind of seductive. It was like I pushed back. It was fair use, all that stuff. But to have that kind of, if you if you have a good idea and something that's kind of smart and kind of cuts through the cultural morass that we kind of function through, like, saying sorry as an American. You probably saw that guy at the Olympics did the same thing recently. I mean, it's great. It's like, like you come up with these things and using the media that is out there in a way. In some ways, it comes from, yeah, I always remember Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys said, don't fight the media, become the media. It's like you have to learn how to kind of play with that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But that's, yeah, I think, if you can reach people, especially when I really sort of dedicated myself to being a political artist, that I think art can help change the world and can help shift the narrative. At least making people maybe giggle, even smile. The amount of people who reached out to me after that Sorry project, it was really heartwarming. It was just fantastic. And the number of MAGAs who were completely pissed off, like on MSN, it's fantastic. I mean, you got under their skin, which is, kind of what good protest does, because it lingers there and hopefully plants some seeds of change.
One of our audience members mentioned the word hacking, and that seems to be somewhat apropos to exactly that. I'm going to see if we can open this up to audience members, see if this is working. Yes. Does anybody have any questions? Can you hand this nice lady over here behind you?
Hi, Joseph. This is Beverly Natus, and it's lovely to hear you speak about your work. What I find most engaging about it is that you go from the intimacy of a conversation on the street to the more, I don't know how to describe it, disassociated version that happens in a video game where there's not as much personal contact. And then it gets picked up in these random searches where it becomes another kind of intervention. And
Yeah.
I love the flexibility of that. It's really phenomenal that you're able to have these conversations in person and then insert stuff that just ripples out in different ways. So I just wanted to thank you for it. I don't have a question.
Well, that's very kind. Nice to see you, or not see you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Disembodied voices. That's what we specialize
That's a very kind comment. Yeah, I think it's very.
Looks like Jimmy over there has a question.
Hi, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be in your presence. I did submit for the show, but I didn't get in. That's okay. When you did the video games, holy crap, that's me. When you did the video games, when Trump was blaming the Parkland on video games, and then you did video games, did you agree with him?
No. Actually, Well, it's complicated because in fact, if you do a little research on that, I mean there's literally no um, causal link between video game violence and real world violence. Like there has been loads of research done around this, and there's actually one study, I think it was out of Brown University, that actually saw that when major gaming titles were released, actual real world violence dipped just a little bit in the United States, right? And that's logical. People are staying home playing the game, right? They're not out getting into trouble. But it's like the attacks on Hollywood violence. I mean, I have problems with the violence and the how it represents things in video games. And GTA has horrible representations of race, of violence, of sexism. But the thing is, it's like it's not what's making these things happen. It's the fact that there's all these guns, right? And for me, it was like the game as an automated playback system was kind of pointing back at us and saying, we're not the problem. This is the problem. Like that people are actually being killed in the real world with all these goddamn weapons, right? And that they're like this representation that maybe is more of a symptom than the cause, right? So it was meant because I got a lot of comments like that on Twitch TV from gamers who were like, "Man, why are you pointing this out? Did we get enough shit, for playing these games?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. Think about it. It's like it's the game is actually it's it's like it's the game is sort of telling us what the problem is in a way. It was a way to sort of twist the game to the content I wanted to share with people. Whether that's clear or not, I don't know. It's definitely probably one of the darkest pieces I've made. And yeah, I don't know.
But I would think of Tarantino. Like, do you have a problem with Tarantino?
It just depends. I mean, from what I hear, he's an asshole, but I don't know. I yeah, I don't
I
know.
would challenge him.
That's a
I,
big, a
one of
big
the
discussion
things
you could have there for sure.
One of the things that I think is very, I mean, you answered the question earlier. You said it was complicated. I think that's one of the things that your work definitely brings into not necessarily question and not necessarily critique, but certainly brings into the conversation is what is the role of the artist? Is the role of the artist to be the critique, or is it simply to put the information out there to show up, to let other people come to their decisions of what they feel about about what you're showing, like with the drones.
Mhm.
Yes, there's the cause and there's the effect, but I think you problematize an easy answer, excuse me, in a lot of your work, which I find very awesome, actually, I guess.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question? I'm sorry, did you want to answer? Yeah, respond to
No,
that.
no, no. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Question.
Okay, Joseph, now I think you might be able to see me. It's Beverly again. I have a question about whether your students are developing games that reimagine the world, post dystopia. Like, I have a lot of workshops that I'm doing now called Art as Mutual Aid, and
Yeah.
really about helping people see a new system and what does it mean to hospice modernity as we are experiencing its collapse, and plant seeds in the rubble. So are there people, I'm not saying utopic games, but games that are sensible and rational about what we can create in this moment?
I I would say, yes and no. Where I am, I'm not teaching at the moment. I haven't been teaching for about a year and a half now, but I was working in a master's program here at Abertay that was really kind of pretty incredible, the structure of it. It was all collaborative, and we would get these, I co-taught it with several other people. There were about between 40 and 60 master's level students in there. And we put them in groups, and then we would get these concepts, or like we'd had people in the community would approach university, like, nonprofits. One of them was like the, oh, now I can't remember the name of it, the RS BP. It's the like the bird charity in the UK, and they wanted to do a game about the migration of birds around Dundee, and so the students were assigned to work on that collaboratively. And that's very much a, it's not a shooter game, it's not a violent game, it's a game about, sort of simulating these natural processes and things. And we very purposefully, because our focus of our program is video games, and trying to basically, like from the start, we're like, no, you're not doing shooter games. There's enough of that. It's like, how can we use games to do other things? And how can that's the thing that will get you jobs. Like everybody does shooter games and all that. It's like, so we would do all kinds of things like that. Like one was we had one that was actually an idea I had for a larger project, but it was a AR kind of system to memorialize the witches of Scotland. There was a database that came out that had a Google Map thing of about 3,000 something people who had been killed as witches in Scotland. And I had this idea, what if at every location you could do an AR memorial where you would, oh, this is where, this person was killed and here was the circumstances and all that. So we had students work on that, and they did a version of that for what would be a memorial for the witch who was burned in Dundee. So that kind of thing. But it varies. I mean, the students do what they want to do, but we definitely try to push them to think differently in the program. But it is a particular, yeah, it's kind of like most. Well, like if you have a program in art that is, dealing with illustration or that kind of thing, all the students want to come in and do kind of anime figures. They all want to do the same thing they already know. And it's basically like you got to push them in these other directions, and hopefully some of them will end up doing interesting things. But yeah, it's very challenging. But I'm really personally interested in like the solar science fiction and that kind of stuff that, points towards positive futures and that. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject.
Thanks.
We have
Yeah,
time
thank
for one more. Joe, are you okay? It's after midnight. You got time for one or two more?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good.
Thank you.
We are up against the show starting to come down in a few minutes.
I'd like to open it up a little bit more to the art of political resistance. You juried the show. A lot of the artists here have work in the show. There's a lot of humor in the show. Can we
Yeah.
maybe weave back to the idea of hacking and using existing government platforms like their soldier video game? There was just a recent case in Nashville. A comedy performer made a fake ICE report to ICE website, and a kindergartner teacher reported a pair of immigrant parents dropping off a 6-year-old, but it was a fake site. So the border between truth and falsity and comedy and appropriating government platforms seems to be a theme, a pattern in the artwork of political resistance. Can you comment? Maybe it flesh
Well,
out more. Thank you.
yeah, sure. I mean, it's I think one of the things that's, the emergence of Trump and MAGA and all that, it's really hard to do satire now, right? It's really hard to do anything that rises above, the insanity that you see coming out of his own mouth every day. It's really yeah, I don't know. Like I'm a big fan of like the Yes Men, and what they, the stuff that they've done. I'm not sure if a lot of what they did, 20 years ago would resonate at all today, because there's every time you get up in the morning, you turn on your computer and half the people you're seeing on threads are probably AIs or bots. The imagery you're seeing is, oh God, how many times have we posted, wow, I hope this is real, or maybe this is, it's like, yeah, I think we all have to be really careful how we navigate all of this stuff at this point. But there's still, there are still people like, I did see something that like there was somebody who paid for the URL of the Trump Kennedy Center,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
That kind of
parody.
stuff, and So you just have to keep thinking around them or be keep in front of it as much as you can. But yeah, it's really difficult. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. It is hard to know what's real and what's not anymore. There's so much AI slop out there that's just depressing. Yeah, good question. I just think I mean, I've always been a big advocate. I think, one of the countries that I think gets it right with this stuff is Finland. They teach really heavily media literacy to kids, like teach them how to navigate this stuff. I mean, I don't, as far as I know, most high school and elementary schools in the States, they don't teach us stuff. It's the air we breathe. It's like you just sort of take it for granted. And we don't teach kids how to really think about how to deal with all this stuff, right? So, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question.
Are there any last questions or anything that anybody would like to add? How about you, Joe? Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me. So, early on, you had the poetry. Did you ever run across William? Was it William Blythe? He did poetry. William Blythe did a group of poems. Poems that didn't rock the world. I was wondering if you ever ran across him, the American poet. Blythe.
I know Bly. I couldn't hear most of your question.
Robert Bly. Did you ever run across Robert Bly and poems from the Iraq War? That was kind of interesting, but
Wasn't he like, was he the guy who was part of the men's movement back in the 80s? Yeah. I'm not aware of his Iraq.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, he's almost beneath contempt. At that point, I want to thank you for putting together for juroring our show and for being such a great professor that I remembered you immediately, or you thought of you. I don't know if that was really badly said. But thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, all the artists, for being part of this show. Dave, you're good ending these things. I'm like,
No, I also want to thank you, Joe, and on behalf of CoCA and the board, thank you so much for the last 6 months. It's been a wonderful show. We've had a lot of great response. It's been great to be part of Fall of Freedom too, which is acting up again. There's some activations in May and October.
Yeah, there's some more of that happening. Yeah.
There's more happening. I also want to do a final plug for our catalog that Ray Freeman designed, that I contributed to, that all of you contributed to, are here tonight. Your artist statements are in here. We feel that artist statements are a big part, not just the visual art, but the writing by artists is also very important to us. So they're all gathered up in this book here, this catalog, with some remarks from our juror as well, Joseph DeLappe. So that'll be available on our website. Anything else I'm missing?
And we'll be sending you a copy.
Let me just say,
Awesome.
we have a few left, but if we sell out, we will have more for next first Thursday. So come back.
Can I also, I forgot to say thank you for organizing this. Thanks for inviting me, Xavier, and everybody involved. It's been a really interesting experience. And I'm really sorry I didn't get to see the show in person, but the documentation I've seen looks great. I wanted it to look like a kind of street protest,
Did you ever get the book? I'm sure we'll send you a copy of the book, and that'll give you.
Yeah. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Big round of applause for our.
And congrats to the artists. Great stuff. Thanks very much. I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah. Get some sleep. Have a great night.
Cheers. See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah,